Hey everyone, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, also the publisher at Autonomy Global. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, you should. But we are here on the Dawn of Autonomy, and we are deep into a month that we've dedicated to this theme of safety and standards. Thank you, Viasat, for sponsoring this month. And today we have the pleasure of having on the show Christian Ramsey from uAvionix. When I think about safety in the skies, I think about uAvionix. And if you haven't met Christian, now's your opportunity. So welcome to the show, Christian.
Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate it. Love being here. And I love that you make that connection between safety and uAvionix, because that's really what we're all about.
Absolutely. I know I've been a fan for a long time, and we've had Britt Wanick, your marketing guy, on the show a couple times, and just following all the things you're doing. And Christian, quite frankly, and everybody out there, when that midair collision happened in the Washington, D.C. area, I think it impacted a lot of us in the community. And, watching LinkedIn, seeing what's happening, and I saw this thing that I think was called a rant that Christian published. And I reached out to them and I'm like, you guys have to be on the show this month to talk a little bit more about that. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, Christian, I want to give you an opportunity to tell folks a little bit about yourself first before we dive deep into, kind of those events and maybe what could have prevented that.
Yep. Great. All right. So personally, my history, I've always been in aviation technology and always focused on safety. So, I've been through the flight simulator and flight training device industry, moved into airspace and FAA management through airport surveillance and the ADS-B program at large with the FAA, not as a contractor to the FAA. And then moved into research and development into detect and avoid technologies, leveraging ADS-B, which led me to meet the founders of uAvionix and join the company in 2016. 2016 is really when uAvionix took off. We were founded in 2015, but really focused on miniaturization, certification, and enabling a cooperative airspace environment so that drones can coexist with manned aircraft. We weren't calling them advanced air mobility or anything along the lines back then. It was really focused on drones. So miniaturization was critical to our technology and growth. Spent a good year and a half focusing on that miniaturization capability. And now, fast forward 5 years, we are a complete avionics product line in general aviation, in defense, really still strong on transponders, ADS-B technology, but also moving into other detect and avoid capabilities and technologies and cockpit displays for general aviation. And a lot of us at uAvionix are licensed pilots, and it's really just something we're all passionate about.
Yeah, and we just rolled through basically all the products that you guys were going to be talking about in the show. 10 years of innovation, a decade. So congratulations on that. And, it's been, like I said, wonderful to watch everything that you guys are doing and how you've, like you said, evolved with the aviation industry because there's so much going on. That last product, the Ping, is remote ID. I mean, that just came out, now it's 2025. So I think it was 2023 when it was officially published. So yeah. Was it 2023? I can't remember. It's all kind of a blur right now, but anyway, so you kind of alluded to it, Christian, but I want to be very specific about it. How did uAvionix get started?
Yeah. So our technical founder is still with us. He's our CTO today. His name's Paul Beard. He came from the silicon industry. And so he had a lot of success with a company called Cypress Silicon, really understood the miniaturization aspects of radios. He was passionate at the time about RC aircraft, and he developed a command and control link, which is now the standard link for remote control aircraft that's used in every industry and in every RC aircraft. The brand is called Spectrum. that pivoted into how the growth of the drone industry. So RC aircraft, not a huge leap into commercial drones and these things that were coming out, by a company called DJI that were, amazing technologies at the time for, flying cameras. And he sort of envisioned that, hey, there's a future where these things are going to be coexisting with aircraft. He was a helicopter pilot. At the same time, I was really focused on the opposite end. I was focused on airspace surveillance. I was with a company called Harris, delivering the ADS-B network and running research and development programs for ADS-B. We met at an AUVSI and just really hit it off. And a few months later, I jumped ship from Harris and joined Paul, and we began developing solutions for drone detect and avoid capabilities. That was really the key. The key start was ADS-B, and like I said, we've grown into lots of other adjacencies since then. But that was the key initiative of, hey, this was around the 2016 timeframe. The ADS-B mandate was due to be complete by January 1st of 2020. So, hey, in 4 years, just about every aircraft is going to be equipped with ADS-B out, and it's a perfect technology for detect and avoid for these drones capabilities.
Yeah, I want to dumb this down for a minute, Christian. I mean, we have a relatively savvy audience, but we do have a very diverse audience, and not everybody fully appreciates what ADS-B is and why it's so important.
Yeah, appreciate that. I mean, at its simplest, aircraft used to be tracked by radar only, right? So big installations on the ground, they spin around. You've seen them at all the airports you travel to. Truth is, they're not super accurate, right? And because they're not super accurate, there's a lot of buffer zones built into the airspace, right? In terms of how much space there has to be between each aircraft. Now, that was pre-dawn of GPS. Fast forward now we've got GPS, we've got the accuracy of GPS. So ADS-B is simply a GPS receiver tied to a radio broadcaster that exists on the airplane or aircraft itself, and it broadcasts, hey, I'm aircraft 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's my position with the accuracy of GPS. It's unencrypted. It's something that can be received by just about anyone, and hence the dawn of programs like FlightAware, et cetera, that really allow aircraft tracking to exist, is all because of ADS-B and what that brought to it. You couldn't do that before ADS-B existed. So it's along with that, there's a rule and a regulation that requires most aircraft have to have this on board, and so you've got a sort of a built-in protection mechanism for detect and avoid for drones.
So there's ADS-B out, which is that kind of, if you will,
broadcast.
Hey, we're here, we're here. And then there's ADS-B in. You mentioned, since it's Safety and Standards Month, that there was this FAA mandate about ADS-B with kind of a deadline of 2020.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Christian? Because I know, just like every rule, there's exceptions to the rule, there's loopholes to the rule. And, can you kind of walk us through that and what that looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we're really passionate about right now. So the ADS-B mandate, I'll call it that, requires that any aircraft, list of exceptions excluded, that flies within certain airspaces, and typically it's controlled airspace. So it's Class A airspace, which is everything above 18,000 feet to 60,000 feet. Class B airspace, which is your largest set of airports. Class C airspace, which is your next set of large airports. All have to be equipped with ADS-B out technology. They have to be transmitting their position. Right. Turns out that mandate captures pretty much all of commercial traffic, right? Because they're flying in and out of those major airports, and they're flying above 18,000 feet. That leaves a lot of gaps for small aircraft at low altitudes, right? So general aviation aircraft, we've captured a lot of them, right? But there's still somewhere between 20 and 30,000 aircraft in the US that are not equipped with ADS-B out. ADS-BN was never part of the mandate. You don't have to be listening. Of course, you get all the benefits of ADS-B by listening and having an ADS-B receiver. And the benefit of not having that mandate was that things like portable ADS-B receivers became popular because they're really cheap. They can work with your iPad or your phone and give you an airspace view around you. But it wasn't required that you had to have that ADS-B in. But that problem and list of exceptions that you mentioned, so 20,000 or so general aviation aircraft not equipped, those guys are flying at low altitudes relative to the commercial airspace. They're more closely proximate to drone and AAM applications, and they're flying in an environment where you have to detect them and avoid them, and that creates a problem. There are other few exceptions like military aircraft. So we just saw, unfortunately, what could happen in the worst case scenario ever when a military aircraft has their ADS-B turned off at DCA. There are exceptions for gliders, balloons, aircraft without electrical equipment. And so, there are gaps, but when your airspace is, call it 80% equipped, and you're looking at your iPad and you're looking at all the traffic around you, you get a little bit of a false sense of security that you're seeing everything because you see a lot. But there's 20% of aircraft that are not equipped out there and that are presenting a risk at this point.
Yeah, I've had, Christian, I'm not anywhere near the experience of you or anybody else in the aviation world, but I did have my Civil Air Patrol flight, and you get to see, and you're exactly right. The pilot had a little iPad. You could see everything on it, or so you thought. You still had to be looking out the window, and that that's the big difference. Obviously, with uncrewed aircraft, you don't have that pilot looking out the window. And so, tell us a little bit about what the FAA chose to do with uncrewed aircraft in terms of ADS-B out.
They choose to ban it.
I know, like ban, right? So like, and so that was in Part 107 and the smaller ones, and I'll say small with air quotes here, 55 pounds and below. When it comes to some of the larger, I think, say you've got a 300-pound uncrewed vehicle.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're wanting ADS-B out in that thing, but like, I guess my question is, what was the rationale, if you can explain that? And, how do you think that's going so far? We don't have, I'd say, ubiquitous UAS operations, at least not to the extent that I think they could be.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that?
The movement started probably early in uAvionix's years, so 2016, 2017. And if you remember, this was a time when Amazon was all over the place saying they were going to be delivering packages within 5 years, right?
True,
and Google Wing as well. And they were projecting at that time, within that 5-year period, millions of drones blanketing our skies, delivering our shampoo and our burritos all over the place, right? Yeah. And they were projecting ADS-B is the solution. We're going to put ADS-B on all of these things, and that totally just freaked the FAA out, right? And because ADS-B, while it is very useful in that use case, that's not how the FAA used it. The FAA used it for air traffic control purposes, not for the air-to-air situational awareness benefits that we all experience every day as pilots, whether drones or on. And in an air traffic control context, millions of drones delivering your shampoo and your burritos creates a distraction at best, right, to the air traffic controllers. Those distractions can be mitigated through technical means, right? Filters.
Yeah, I was just thinking,
right?
Digital infrastructure.
Right. But the bigger concern was, we don't have the spectrum capacity for millions of drones on ADS-B, right? ADS-B operates on 2 specific frequencies in the US, and one of them is very crowded and one is very not crowded. But still, hey, if we're going to be putting drones on ADS-B, that could create a problem for us that destroys the primary purpose for why we built ADS-B in the first place. That was the impetus for stop it before it starts. put the ban in place, right? Since then, things have evolved a lot, right? We have Part 107, right? And Part 107 is the largest percentage of drones in the airspace today. That means we're in visual line of sight. It's a pretty good argument that, hey, you don't need an ADS-B out system on your Part 107 drone flying below 400 feet when I can see it, 50 yards away. And so that's great, right? Because no issues at all with sort of these common sense restrictions of ADS-B on Part 107 or super low altitude. But you do now enter this realm of, but we are flying long distance inspection drones with something that may be 50 pounds and that could cause serious damage if it were to hit an aircraft. And we are flying in controlled airspace. And by banning it, you're creating another aircraft, dark aircraft out there that I'm not going to be able to see on my iPad as a pilot and avoid. And not only that aircraft's a whole lot harder to see than a Cessna because it's smaller, right? It may be a third the size or a quarter the size. So it's a lot harder,
and honestly,
right?
Some of these companies are making them like white. I mean, looking down, especially if you're high up and there's clouds, to see a little white drone, or now there's one that's green. You're flying over grass or land. It's just like, what? You think people can see that? I can't even see them from the ground, honestly, half the times. I mean, this is why, even though I have my pilot license, I don't fly drones because it's really hard for me to see one in the sky, even when I'm flying it, even when it's not far.
It's harder than you think to see the manned aircraft. I mean, when it's small. So now our use cases of something that probably should be authorized to fly with ADS-B out, they're growing, and they're only going to grow with Part 108 or executive orders or whatever that's going to help us, expand into BVLOS operations. But we've got this ban in place, and so looking back on the spectrum, the original problems. Spectrum, if we eliminate all Part 107, we're not or below 400 feet, we can probably eliminate those from the spectrum calculations, right? That's true. We can take a look at the spectrum frequency of 978 megahertz. I mentioned that ADS-B operates on two frequencies. 978 is not only way underutilized, it's declining in use. And that's just by nature of the way the ADS-B mandate was implemented. A lot of folks were incentivized to go to 978 first because it was cheaper to install on a general aviation aircraft. But some of their original equipment fails and it gets replaced by a 1090 megahertz. Right? A little bit technical there, but it's declining in use, which creates an opportunity for using this frequency for beyond visual line of sight drones of a certain risk category, call it that. Right?
Totally. Totally get that.
And the UK just authorized that very specific use case for 978 megahertz. So they have embraced it. They've said ADS-B out for drones flying BVLOS on 978 is our solution to detect and avoid and remote ID. And that was just announced a few weeks ago.
Wow. Yeah, I know you guys kept up with that with the products, and we're going to get to that. But what I want to do is kind of bring it back because, like I said, the drones right now are not, as you said, kind of blanketing the skies like was predicted years ago. Not quite yet. But when they do, it's going to create an interesting situation. And yet we have general aviation, we've got helicopters of different flavors, whether they're military or commercial. And then there's certain airports. And so I want to talk about DCA and what happened there because when you think about safety, everybody just assumes when they step foot onto, American Airlines, and that was the flight in this case, 65 or 64 souls on board, 3 in that Army helicopter. You assume, you're going to land at Reagan, no problem. And something went seriously awry here. So, and I know you're super passionate about this. So I want to give you the opportunity to talk about what happened. And then I want to kind of loop it into what is out there, and including what you guys bring to the table that could have made a difference here. So let's talk about the collision first.
Yeah.
And what we know.
Yeah, and I don't have any inside information beyond, reading NTSB reports that are publicly available. So,
Yep.
my opinions are mine. But it appears that the first problem that so let's back up just a second and talk about you might have heard something called the Swiss cheese model of safety, and that is uh, mentioned, and I've heard it mentioned in the NTS briefings, but nobody really explains what that
Oh,
means.
tell us what it is.
Right? And the what this means, what this is trying to explain is that there are levels of safety or accident prevention, but none of them are perfect, right? And so if you imagine a level of safety as a Swiss cheese, right, and a piece of Swiss cheese with some holes in it, right? And if
Yeah.
something approaches that piece of Swiss cheese and it doesn't go through the hole, that level of safety protected something from happening, right? If it
Yeah.
went through the hole, that level of safety had an escape, right? It didn't protect against a thing. So
Mhm.
with the Swiss cheese model, you try to layer multiple levels of Swiss cheese so that something doesn't fall through all of the holes. When something falls through all of the holes that are layered on top of each other, something bad happens, right? So
Mm.
you've got a level of safety that might be the airspace design. You've got a level of safety that might be a radio communications frequency or a radar system, or ADSB is a level of safety. So you've got all of these layers that
Mm.
could prevent an accident. And when all of those holes in the Swiss cheese line up and something gets through all of them, an accident occurs, right?
Yeah.
And so in the case of a DCA, those levels of safety were exposed. Something went through all the holes in the Swiss cheese. Um,
Mhm.
Airspace design is sort of at a route, right? So we have this helicopter route that follows along the bank of the Potomac River that turns out was only 75 feet at best from the glide slope of the approach to that specific runway, right? So airspace design had a problem
Mm.
when that runway was in use. The helicopter route was just too close, right?
Okay.
And that was missed somewhere. That was the first failure, that the airspace design failure. There were the airspace was surveyed by radar. Great, right?
Yep.
um, that that was there, but something was amiss in the tower, right? So folks saw the two aircraft approaching
Mhm.
each other, but something didn't happen to
Mhm.
avert the accident. The airspace layer, or the piece of Swiss cheese that I'm passionate about, of course, was ADSB.
Right.
The American Airlines flight had a transponder on board. It had ADSB out on board. So it
Yep.
was transmitting.
Okay.
We don't know. I don't know if it had an ADSB in receiver on board. It probably did not. We do know it had a TCAS system on board. Some TCASs incorporate ADSB, some do not. I do not know if this one did, right? But it was broadcasting its ADSB out position. The helicopter had ADSB out installed, but physically had it turned off. And that is a layer of Swiss cheese that was removed by policy, I suppose, right?
Mm.
Not
Mhm.
not through a technical failure, but by their
Right.
policy to turn that off.
Right.
And it was removed. If that layer was on, if it was
Mhm.
broadcasting ADSB out, I can't say whether or not the accident would have been averted, right?
Yeah.
The TCAS system may have detected it, or an ADSB system in the American Airlines flight may have detected it if they had it.
Yeah.
But they also did not have in the helicopter an ADSB-in system. They did not have a display, whether it be portable, iPad, installed, whatever, that saw the ADSB-in transmissions coming from the airline. It did have it, right?
Christian, you mentioned TCAS, and I don't want to assume everybody just knows what that is.
Yeah,
Can you just very briefly kind of explain
sure.
what
A TCAS system stands for Traffic Collision Alerting System, and it is the system that exists predates ADSB. Same idea, that the TCAS system will detect other aircraft in the airspace,
that
and
is?
it
Mhm.
does through not through an ADSB signal typically. but through transponder transmissions and directional antennas on the aircraft, and it will alert the pilot to traffic nearby. It gives audible alerts. It says traffic, right, and makes you look. Problem with TCAS is that once you approach an airport, you're getting alerts all over the place, right? Because traffic is
everywhere.
confined around, it's everywhere in an airport, right? And so the TCAS alerts are suppressed. They're not, once you get below a certain altitude, flying into an airport, they turn off so that it's not a nuisance and giving you false alarms everywhere.
Yeah.
And that could very well have been the situation in the case of this accident.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I still get chills when I think about it. Just like so horrible, honestly. So look, there's this balance, all these technologies you talked about, and this Swiss cheese that happened in this case, apparently, how do you view, in a perfect world, the balance between pilot visual awareness and technology-based awareness, even on crewed aircraft?
Perfect world, we have universal equipage. And what do I mean by that? I mean that every crewed aircraft has ADS-B out installed. And every unmanned aircraft has ADS-B in installed. So in that way, we're not crowding the airspace with transmissions, but every drone is listening, right? Every drone is listening for you. And that gives you, as the crewed aircraft, an incentive, a fear-based incentive to protect yourself by broadcasting your position, right? And that's what we call universal equipage, right? That's the perfect world for us. Now, again, no technology is perfect. ADS-B is not perfect, but it is the best we've got right now. Without a complete invention of something brand new, it is the best we've got. It's technology 80% of the airspace is using. Let's close that gap. Right?
Yeah, and look, you and I both know there are some lobbying efforts as well, for privacy reasons. I'm doing air quotes here, like, we don't want our plane to be tracked. And I'm not talking like a national security flight. Let's just call it what it is. Maybe some rock stars or some, Silicon Valley tech billionaires that didn't like having their planes being tracked, who are, somehow able to leverage this ability to turn ADS-B off or not have to even have it in the first place. And that just adds to this 30,000 unequipped folks flying around in the sky today. So let's talk a little bit about your products, right? That support ADS-B in and out. And because let's talk about the crewed aircraft, and then let's talk about how you've miniaturized these for even the uncrewed world in use cases where this could be, necessary, like beyond visual line of sight, some of the things you mentioned earlier. So tell us about those.
Okay, so it all starts with a common technology we've got in all of our ADS-B products, but I mentioned the miniaturization effort in early years, right? So we literally have an ADS-B chip. It's a chip, and it's a dual frequency radio that can either transmit or receive, and it's the common core technology across everything that we do, whether it's certified or uncertified, portable or installed. It's the core technology that we've got, and we designed it as a chip because at the time we said it's going to have to be a chip if it's going to be in drones, right? And so that's the impetus for the miniaturization. But as we approached the general aviation or the ADS-B mandate date of 2020, we were looking at the equipage rates of the airspace. So FAA still publishes how many aircraft are equipped every month, right? You can go to an FAA website and look at that. And we were seeing that there was a massive gap in what they wanted to achieve and where they actually were.
Yeah.
And that gap was being described as being a problem with bottlenecks of avionics shops. You literally couldn't get your car into the garage and get it installed in time because the wait was so long, right? In order to get stuff installed in your airplane. And hey, we started thinking, well, hey, if we've got a chip, that gives us some really interesting options for installing it, right? We could put it in places that our competitors can't, because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to go behind a panel and it doesn't have to take a week of installation time.
Right.
And so we came up with we've got 3 products now, 4 that are ADS-B light replacements. So they literally replace your light bulbs, your navigation lights on the general aviation aircraft. These are Sky Beacon, Tail Beacon, and Tail Beacon X are 3 variants of ADS-B out systems. And we've got one called Sky Sensor, which is an ADS-B in sensor. But it literally is about a 15-minute installation. You unscrew 3 screws, you use the same electrical wiring that powered your light, you screw it back on to the wing, and you're ADS-B out compliant. And that enabled many thousands of customers to get installed ADS-B out in time for the mandate without having to wait in line for the shops, because we had a mobile force of installers.
So this is like self-service. Like I buy this thing and I can screw it on myself.
For some customers, right?
Yeah.
Now legally you can't do that on a certified aircraft, but you can have a certified inspection authority sign off on your installation, right? And that's a lot easier. So you can call someone up to sign it, do the inspection and sign it off. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Wow. That's okay. That's awesome. And that same chip, I assume later, was small enough to then even leverage with drone technology.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it wasn't even later. It was we had the drone tech before we had the GA tech. So we
okay.
right? So,
I love that. So
yeah.
I mean, you guys that's so cool that you were thinking so far ahead and you're like, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem over here we can solve easily with this. Now, you talked about layers of safety. You talked about Swiss cheese. There's other, let's call them complementary products that you guys obviously have that help with these layers. And I want to talk a little bit about an AOA, or angle of attack indicator. And we're still kind of in the general aviation world a little bit, but Christian, explain why every GA pilot might consider installing an AOA indicator like your uAvionix AV20-S or AV30.
Yeah. And so angle of attack. So if you look into the data for general aviation crashes, right? They're mostly not driven by engine failures or some catastrophic event like your wing falls off, right? They're mostly.
Although I think that just happened with a helicopter over the Hudson.
It did. I saw that. It was terrible. Yeah, but most of your accidents are not in that category. Most of your accidents are something called a stall. And when people hear the word stall, they think engine stalled, but that's not what happens. What they're saying is the technical term is the wing stalled. And so the shape of a wing creates lift of the aircraft. So aircraft flows over and above the wing, and that creates lift, and that lifts the aircraft up, that lifts the airplane up. If the airplane wing is not pointed correctly into the wind, that airflow is disturbed enough that it doesn't produce the lift you need, and it will drop, and it will cause the aircraft to go into a stall. And that angle into the wind is what's called angle of attack, right? And so the AOA indicator is something that gives you a visual representation depicting the angle that the wind is flowing over your wing so that you do not approach a stall. Old technology in a airplane are stall horns or stick shakers for more complex aircraft that kind of try to predict that as well, but they don't do as well as an angle of attack indicator. The FAA just a couple of months ago produced a SAIB, which stands for Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin. And what that is, it's just a recommendation, but it's an official recommendation that all general aviation aircraft should have an angle of attack indicator installed in their aircraft. It's important enough that we recommend it. They're not mandating it because they don't like to go that route for most
Yeah.
right? But they're saying
Yeah.
you should have it, right?
Yeah.
And we've got two products that do this, right? One's called
Mhm.
the AV30 and one's called the AV20. But they're multi-function devices, but the core safety piece of that component.
Now, don't laugh at me, but I'm going to ask a question about transitioning this over to drones a little bit. Like, so there are fixed wing drones. Some of them can be pretty big.
Yeah.
Is this technology, the AOA indicator, relevant to larger fixed wing drones? Or, of course, right now I don't see a lot of eVTOLs. They all have, but some of them are like the STOLs, the short takeoff and landing and things like this. Like, in other words, do you see this technology bridging over into the kind of that advanced air mobility or uncrewed world as well?
Maybe into the advanced air mobility. It gets pretty complex when you've got things like tilt wings and eVTOLs and things along those lines.
Yeah.
But you've got way more advanced flight control systems and autopilots that are piloting those aircraft that are,
Yeah.
measuring the system performance when, as a GA pilot, sometimes you're flying in a pretty unsophisticated aircraft, and
Mhm.
for some reason, conditions indicate that you just keep pulling back on the stick because you perceive that you're losing altitude, and that can get you into that scenario that you're not aware of, right? That an
Yeah.
AOA
Yeah.
can warn you of. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I just didn't know. So, and I figured there might be people out there thinking the same thing. So I figured I just asked that question. And I don't mean to jump around between ADS-B and these other things and back, but I know you guys also make this Echo ESX EXP
Sure.
ADS-B solution. Tell us a little bit about that and how it's different from, your other models that you mentioned earlier.
Yep, this is our newest product that we just announced at Sun and Fun a couple of weeks ago. That image there shows it with the AV30. The AV30 being that one of its functions being the angle of attack indicator. One of the other functions of the AV30 is a transponder control. So if you need to squawk a different code, or air traffic control tells you to input a different code in there, you interact with that device, which is why it's shown there. We had a lot of customers that were able to equip with those wingtip and tail light systems that I described. But there was a subset of aircraft that don't have the appropriate form factor light for replacement, and that's really what the ESX is meant to address. It's a more traditional installation. It's not quite as easy and fast as a light replacement is, but it's the same core technology. It's just expanding our market to aircraft that have more modern lighting on board.
Okay, and I don't want to go too down a rabbit hole, but Mode S, is that the civilian mode versus, what is it, Mode 5? That's military.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are different transponder modes. Transponders respond to interrogation from a radar system, and the interrogation is essentially asking a question, and depending on the question that's being asked, the transponder will respond with that specific answer, and that specific answer is called a mode. It can answer certain types of questions. There's mode A, which is the squawk code. There's mode C, which is the altitude. Mode S helps with some of the spectrum efficiencies, and it also gives each aircraft a unique identifier, whereas you never had that before. So now we know who's who with a Mode S transponder. And ADS-B is really a flavor of Mode S. It just doesn't require the interrogation. So it's the same sort of messages that get broadcast with a Mode S. Now, you mentioned Mode 5. Mode 5 is a military equivalent of Mode S, right? And the military equivalent being, hey, it's encrypted. It does some fun things with the RF so that it can't be sort of triangulated upon. And, it's meant for, battlefield situational awareness and combat ID.
I know you've got products for that. We're not going to talk too much about that. I want to take it from the air to the ground. And I know, gosh, Christian, I can't even remember if maybe it was recent, but it feels like it was a while ago. You guys acquired or merged, I don't know what the right word is, Iris Automation, and they've got the optical solutions like the Cassia G, and that's the ground radar. So tell us about, I think you've had a new release though since then, at 4.0. Tell us a little bit about Cassia G, this newer iteration, and how it helps beyond visual line of sight operations, especially at night. Now we're kind of back into the drone world.
Yeah, now back into the drone world. So uAvionix acquired Iris Automation. So that was year and a half ago, roughly, right? Iris Automation CEO was John Damish, who is now our CEO. So that's why there's some confusion about who acquired who at the same time, right? But right, but their technology was meant to solve the problem of how do I avoid an aircraft that does not have ADS-B on board, right? And there are only a few technologies you can use to do that fairly reliably today. Radar systems, camera systems. There's some acoustic systems out there. Cassia and the Iris Automation portfolio is based on radar-based systems, and so I'm sorry, camera-based systems. And they have had slash has solutions that are meant for onboard aircraft and solutions that are ground-based. We've had a lot more success with the ground-based systems, and largely because cameras are kind of heavy, and so they're not as applicable to being on board an aircraft. But we've got a ground-based system called Cassia G that has achieved a lot of success in the drone as a first responder type of applications. Think of it as a virtual visual observer or a visual observer type of replacement that you can have on watch constantly.
It's like another layer of safety, like we've been talking about this whole time.
Another layer of safety. It's also got ADS-B integrated into it, our ADS-B system. So it's now a multi-mode detection capability. So it detects ADS-B aircraft and non-ADS-B aircraft, and essentially it stares at the sky and detects things moving around, right? And it gives you an alert if there's something flying out there. And so being camera-based, we have had some limitations, right? Cameras are only so good for so far. And the other things cameras can't do is they can't see through clouds, they can't see through bad weather. And at nighttime, it was a challenge, right? And growth in the DFR market, bad guys are out at night. Cops want to see what's going on and fly their drones at night to see. And so we had a lot of requests for adding a nighttime capability to the Cassia G system. And that's what we've been working on. That's the recent release. So the Cassia G infrastructure now can network multiple ground Cassia G systems together and be able to triangulate on aircraft flying in the airspace from their light detection. And that's how we've been able to solve that problem. Yep. And just got our recent first nighttime waiver with that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I mean, I worked with Iris and John, and at the time, Lori DeMatteis was also over there. She's with Matrix Base now. But, just watching that product line kind of change and grow over time. And now the fact that you all have kind of integrated what you're doing into it, it's really the best of both worlds, honestly. We're getting short on time, Christian, but I want to talk about what's next for you guys because so much has already happened. But I do want to hit the UK's approval because you mentioned this, the 978 megahertz and kind of what that means. So tell us a little bit about that. And do you have a special ADS-B or other transponder like that goes with that, or is it one of the products we already talked about that is relevant to the UK market?
Yeah, the product's called the Ping 2020i, and poorly named, and we might be rebranding it here soon. But and the reason it was poorly named is because it is one of our oldest products in our portfolio. I mean, it was the product that existed before we transitioned and started building GA products, and it is a drone ADS-B out end-in system, and it's only an inch long and half an inch tall, right? And it's got a GPS and a transmitter on it, and so that is the system that the UK based their spectrum approval on, right? And so we've been running lots of tests with the UKCAA over time, everything from portable systems in general aviation aircraft, which is a popular growth vector for us. Ground-based transmission systems. So in the US here, we've got things called TSB and FSB that are ground-based systems that broadcast weather to pilots in the airspace. They're looking at those kinds of things there. And so that's the product that is immediately applicable in the airspace in the UK. We're probably coming out with a even lower power system so that to address some of the spectrum concerns with that. That's about a 20 watt transmitter now. We can get down to half a watt, and that'll give you a mile or two of visibility.
Yeah.
So,
and does that also incorporate remote ID?
It doesn't. It provides the same function. It doesn't incorporate the ASTM version of remote ID, right? But
okay, gotcha. Because I know you guys have a ping. I feel like you have a
RID.
ping.
Yes, we do. We've got a remote ID module too. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and we've talked about that before, but look, we're getting like really to the close of our end of our time together. I knew time would fly. This has been an education for me, and I'm sure for folks out there. Really appreciate everything you and the uAvionix team are doing to make our airspace safe and to continue advocating for improvements to that. So as you look ahead, Christian, 2025, I mean, we're in Q2 now. What do you see for uAvionix coming down the road that we should all be looking out for?
Well, we've got a few product announcements coming out this May for AVSI, so I won't tell you what those are yet. But
okay, well, stay tuned. You heard it here.
Stay tuned for those. Yeah, we're going to continue to evolve. I think we're taking a much broader look at an ecosystem of things, right? So you see, we added the Cassia to the ADS-B that we have, right? So that same concept of rather than one device that does it all, a device that works with another device, or a device that works with a ground network system, right? And so you're going to see those layers of safety being able to be provided through networks of capabilities.
Yeah, well, look, that makes an abundant amount of sense. I mean, the military has been pushing modular open systems architectures for a while now, and I don't think it's really any different on the civil side. If you already have a system, how great would it be to not have to redo everything, but to be able to plug and play something into it, to have that whole, as you said, ecosystem of safety, if you will. So that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. We will keep our eyes peeled and our ears trained to hear what is happening with uAvionix. We're going to be at, of course, Exponential, Law Tech Connect. Everybody, if you haven't signed up yet, do that. But also check out uAvionix on the floor. That's all she wrote, Christian. Tell folks as we close out how they can find more out about uAvionix and how they can reach you.
Yep. Just to go to uAvionix.com, uAvionix. A lot of people spell it wrong, but that's where you go.
All right.
And awesome. We'll be at AVSI Expo.
All right. Thank you again. And everybody out there for listening in. We are out here.
Thanks.